All right, so now we're gonna go into a series that we're gonna be calling Kill the Knee Shield. This is a huge topic in jiu-jitsu. This is a thing that's come up because a lot of people now are advocating passing from half guard. But what a lot of people run into is the fact that it is extremely difficult sometimes to get past the frames of a good half guard player, specifically the knee shield, right? So the knee shield is managing the distance between my chest and their chest and me gaining upper body control or them denying it, right? So when we're playing passing, we need a plethora of ways that are reliable to get past the knee shield that don't put us in danger. And so one of those ways that a lot of people use, but they use it incorrectly, and I referred to this in an earlier video, is the weave pass. So if Jake's on the ground, we'll put it here, yep. If Jake is on the ground and I want to go for a weave pass, a lot of people like using this pass because maybe they started in gi and it worked really well for them because of the fact that they had lapel grips and they could grab over the collar and really control the bottom person's head to control their ability to manage distance. Managing distance for Jake on bottom is extremely crucial, right? He needs to be able to come close and close distance or come back away from me whenever he chooses. This is how he gets his attacks off. This is how he starts off balance me, create openings, getting underhooks and different things like that, right? So when we're doing this, a lot of people I see all the time, people just put their hand right here. This is how they want to play. And this is not helpful, guys. I would discourage you from doing this anymore. The caveat is whether you have your knee on the ground or up on the thigh. So if your knee is on the ground and you put your hand in like this, all Jake's gonna do is wrap around my elbow. He's gonna shoot this knee out. He's gonna bring this one to his chest, and then he's gonna throw me into a clamp. And it is extremely easy for him to start getting submissions here. This is a move that I hit on people all the time. So many guys come in like this with no real purpose and just sit here. And they're just sitting ducks for me to throw in a clamp and ultimately a triangle or an arm bar, right? So we don't want to play the weave pass with our knee on the ground. When our knee's on the ground, he grabs my arm, he shoots his leg through, I get an overhook, he throws on the clamp, and he can start to, Kimura me, any kind of nasty stuff from the clamp that he wants to do. It's a very, very easy entry. It's kind of an old school entry that people forgot about, but it works extremely well with all these people that just put their hand in as a weave and keep their knee on the floor. So instead of doing that, what we want to do is get our knee onto his thigh. And now we can start to use the weave pass effectively. So when we do the weave pass, I'm not just going to put my hand in any way that I want. I'm not going to have my thumb pointing towards his head. If my thumb is pointing towards his head, I can't put my shoulder pressure into his knee shield. I can kind of do it like this. It's okay. It's not really much pressure. But when I turn my wrist and I point my thumb towards his stomach, now I can turn my knee out in this direction. My hand is pointed towards his stomach and I can start to sprawl on his knee shield. So I'm like this. I'm putting all of my shoulder pressure down into his knee shield to pop it open. He had locked legs before and now he doesn't. Like this. So again, let's say we turn this way and you can see it. I have my knee on his thigh. I take my hand, I put it instead of thumb towards his face, thumb towards his belly button, and now I'm turning and sprawling onto this knee shield. I've opened it up. You can see his feet went unlocked. Now, instead of just staying here, we don't want to stay here because eventually he could put my knee on the ground and go back into these triangles, right? So we need to be able to manage the distance that he has on his head by getting some kind of grip. Now the grip that we're going to use is very specific. If I'm here and I just try to reach for his head like this, it's so easy for him to take this off. Even if I get a collar tie, he can just use his hand to take it off. Even if I go over with a reverse collar tie, easy for him to take it off. And I'm starting to put myself in danger for things like shoulder crushes and stuff like that. If he's a good guard player and he can start to enter into arm locks and whatever other kind of nasty stuff he wants. So instead of doing this, as soon as we get into this position, we can't hang out just here for very long. We want to start getting our hand over his head. So instead of grabbing a collar tie, I'm going to take my hand and place it on the mat behind his head and close my elbow over the crown of his head. So I'm here and I place my elbow over the crown of his head. I don't want to be so high that if he extends, it slips off. And I don't want to be so low that he feels strong and he can open me up, right? So I want to be right on the crown of the head. So I'm turning out like this. I put my elbow on the crown of his head and I close it. Now I try to move. Yeah, it's extremely constraining and binding in that position. And even if he struggles viciously and gets out once or twice, again, this is a pass that's going to be very, very draining on the bottom person. I've had types of passes like this that I've had this done to me, and it is extremely tiring to try to get your head out of such a good bind, right? And able to manage the distance again. So once we get here, we turn and we sprawl open this lock, and then we put our hand over top of his head. And now he can't move. Try to move here. Very taxing for him. That was a little too low, so I want to be here. Go ahead. Yeah, much better. And if I can place my hand on the mat, even better, because now there's more friction. So once we have this friction, we can start walking out of the lock. Once we've walked out of the lock, what our goal is to take this left knee and put it on the ground behind his head to replace this arm. So I'm going to keep walking. I put my knee on the ground to replace it. Now it's my arm and my knee keeping him binded into this pseudo cradle position. Try to move here. Very difficult for Jake to move. Now it's my thigh, which is even stronger than my arm. So at this point, what we're looking to do is keep going behind the back, take this left elbow, cut it through the hips, and then back step to his backside where I get back exposure. I can start grabbing gift wraps and things. Or if he turns this way, I get a side control. If he turns the other way, I get even more back exposure in the form of a turtle. So one more time, guys. We get into this position, and we could either be here on our knees and then put our knee up through the hole, or if you guys like knee cuts, this is a perfect pass for you. So if you like going into a knee cut, I shoot through and he just puts his knee in front. Yep, he puts this happens all the time. This is how you get blocked on a knee pass, right? Or sorry, a knee cut. So once we get this knee cut position, we're just gonna take our hand, put it through, point our thumb towards his stomach, and now I sprawl this lock open, put my arm over the back of his head on the crown, and start walking out. As I've walked out, I take my left knee, place it on the floor behind his head to replace my arm. Right here. Now I can start to come over the top with my left arm and cut it through to the floor on the opposite side of his hip. And now I start walking behind him, and we have back exposure, or if he turns into me, we have a side control. We can start going into mount or whatever we like from there. So this is a really easy way to start passing the half guard with the weave pass that so many people like, except this will not put you in danger, right? We have the ability to actually complete this pass without having the danger of really quick triangles being shot on us and things like that. So this is a really good way for you guys to continue to use this pass that you like so much, especially if you're transitioning from gi to no gi, and you don't have to change everything about it. It's more the ability to control the head is quite different from in the gi. All right, guys, so one more time here. This time, Jake is gonna actually respond a little bit differently. So we talked about getting the knee up onto the thigh. We put our weave in. Our thumb is not pointing towards his head. It's pointing towards his stomach. Now, I turn and I sprawl. My knee is coming out this way. Don't have your knee in like this. A lot of guys try it like this. It's gonna be harder for you to open the lock. So go like this, sprawl. I've opened the lock. Now I'm bringing my hand over his head. And now as I'm walking out, Jake goes to a turtle. He turtles into me. And when he does this, we go to a cradle. It's very easy for me to get a cradle because my arm is already wrapped around his head and my other arm is already in his leg. So a lot of wrestlers will use cradles, but they just want to put people on their back. And in jiu-jitsu, that's somewhat useful, but it's even more useful to take the back from here. So what we're going to do once we get this position is slide this left knee up, throw our right leg over as a hook, and now I take this right arm out immediately and throw it in as a thigh pry. So once I throw this in as a thigh pry, I put my hand inside of his thigh and I turn it out like this and extend. I don't want to just leave my arm like this where it's loose and he just traps it and he rolls me through. And now he's on top. This is not what we want. What we want is a thigh pry. So a thigh pry is my hand inside and extending. Okay, so once we get into this position, hands inside and extending, and now we can take this hand and we throw it through as a claw. So we come under his elbow and onto the opposite trap. So I'm reaching up here, okay? I'm grabbing like this. And now we have our choice of either coming all the way behind his hips and throwing in a hook because his knee and his elbow are separated due to the extension of my forearm, or we can run him down to the floor on his left shoulder and take his back that way. So it can be like this. We lift open our elbow to break his base, start running, lifting his leg, throw in our left hook, our right hook, and now we roll in for the bottom hook. So I'll show that on the other side so you guys can see it, but we'll do it here. So this time he is cradled up and we ended up in this cradle here, right? Midway through the pass, he decided to turtle. Now I'm throwing my hook in over top. I'm taking my arm out and I'm extending over his leg. So I'm opening this up. I don't keep it here where you can trap it. I just put my hand in, extend. Now I grab a claw and I want to put my hips over his hips if I want to just throw in a hook. So I can take my hips over, I can throw in a hook like this. That's very opportunistic and it's open a lot of the time. Or we can break him down. And this works even if he tries to quad pod up. So I'm gonna go here, he tries to quad pod, I can open up the elbow to break him back down and start running to the side to put him on the floor, throw my leg over, take him to the other side to make that a bottom hook. So this is a really easy and complete system to be able to use the weave pass effectively. It's a pass that so many guys like, but it doesn't transition particularly well if you're not taught these details from gi to no gi. So give it a shot. If you guys like the weave pass, let me know how this one feels. And as always, I'll see you on the mats.